says, you are hereby notified that a special workshop meeting of the City of Palatka Commission has been called to be held on Thursday, July 18, 2019 at the City Commission's regular meeting place at City Hall, City Commission Chambers, 201 North 2nd Street, Palatka, Florida. The meeting is called to commence at 3 o'clock. The purpose of the meeting is to hold the first budget workshop for fiscal year 2019-2020. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hill,
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown, Commissioner Borum,
Present.
Commissioner McCaskill,
Here.
Commissioner Campbell.
Present.
All members are present and accounted for, and you have a quorum.
Okay, we'll move on to, having already done the invocation and the pledge, we'll move on to public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Seeing no one new in the audience, we will close public comment. Moving on to item 2, presentation and discussion of the proposed budget.
Okay, so you know I have a corny video to show, but since we're late.
No, we want to see the video.
We're not late.
Yeah.
Okay. This is how I believe that our department heads defend their budgets to me. And I swear this is an actual video of me talking to one or maybe 2 of them.
Which one are you?
I'm the tall one.
$7 a week, and that happens to be a lot more than $28. That was $28. If you go to school, yes, sir. You mean to say you can prove that 7 times 13 is 28? Well, it's gotta be. Sorry, but Mr. Rabbit and I know that that's 28,000. That's what you get. If you can prove it, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will give you the room rent for nothing. You will, but if you don't prove it, you will owe me double the back. Is it a deal? It's a deal. Okay. You have to have any trail on it? Trail line. I got it. What do you have? I got a trail. 7 and 28 is going to come out 13. That's your way. That's my way. That's not come out right. Now, first, I put down the 7. Right? Now, I'm going to divide the 7 into 28. I put that 28 there. Okay. That's you. Now, here we go. 7 into 2. 7 will not go into 2. It will not. That's a very big 7 to push into that little bit, too. You're going to hurt that little 2 off. Of course you will. Now, we take the 2. Okay. Yes. I put that 2 right there. Let's see, you know. But don't drop it and don't lose it. Now, 7 to 8. Once. I put the 1 over here. 1 over there. Now, we're going to carry the 7 because it's very big and it's getting heavy on my shoulders. I'm going to drop the 7 under there. Now, 7 from 8 is 1. Is 1. I put the 1 down there.
Give me 2 back.
Did you want to have one of your pound your hand, please? I would like to use that too. Oh, yeah. That's you. That's you right there. Now, 7 to 21. 3 times. That's right. 7 to 28. 13.
You definitely are.
That's
Very easy by multiplication. You want me to multiply it? Not multiply, multiply. Multiply. All right. Multiply. 7 times 13 is 28. Go ahead. Now, first you're going to put down a 13, right? Fine. There's a 13. Times 7. Times 7. Right? 7 weeks times 13. Right? 7 times 3, 21. 7 times 1, 7. 7. There's one sure way of proving this. One sure way, and that's by addition. You want me to addition it up? I want you to put 13 7 times on that wall and then draw a line and add them up. You want me to put down 13 7 times? That's right. That's not going on, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What's the idea of spreading them up like that? That looks like a flock of seagulls. Here we go. 3, 6, 7. Wait. Let me do the adding this time. Well, 3, 6, 7. I will do the adding. Then there'll be no mistake. All right? That's what they account here. All right? Now, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22, 23, 24.
There you go. There you go. No mistake.
And that's how budget goes with our folks that we have in the back.
You make budgeting so fun.
Yeah.
You got too much time on your hands.
Okay, guys, so to roll into the not funny part.
Oh.
I'm sandwiching you.
We laugh before we cry.
Yes. So again, proposing no millage rate change. Pension, we are seeing increase in pensions among all three of the different funds. General fund alone is going to be about $188-ish, $200,000 hit. So that was really significant this year. We should be seeing a better year next year, but I'm sure it would probably still be an increase, just not as much. Health insurance. So this is a cool thing this year. We are not going to be seeing a health rate increase. We are really trying to work with our vendors and promote a partnership. We have a pro-share agreement, which means that on the good years, they look at the end of the fiscal year, 30 days out, they recalculate depending on what kind of claims that we had, and they give us back a certain percentage of our dollars if we had a good year. If we have a bad year, they do not expect for us to pay any more. So we have had a couple of good years, and all they are asking is that we put that into a contingency fund so that we can start building a health contingency. It can only be used on health. That way, if we do see an increase in health insurance and we are seeing a bad budget year, that it won't actually turn us upside down as bad. So that's the plan.
So we're going out to bid in January, right?
Correct. So we are, and that would be for the next fiscal year though, if we go out for bid.
Correct.
Implement salary schedule. So we are moving away from, or wanting to move away from the step and grade to a salary schedule. It is just bringing everything up to date. I have a little bit more about that in the next slide, a summary on it. We're proposing a one-time non-recurring payment for employees, $1,200 for full-time, $400 for part-time. This is before taxes. Therefore, they will not see the full, they may not see the full $1,200 or the $400 because we have taxes, pension, FICA, that sort of thing taken out of it. So depending on what your deductions are. We are looking to offer single health insurance benefit to the commissioners this year. As a benefit, we are looking at increasing the professional development across all funds, so sanitation, utility will also see an increase. General fund departments already have some of that travel money, the schooling money in there. We have longevity increases this year. We have 3 at 10 years, 3 at 15 years, 2 at 20, and 3 at 25 years. That's all equaling $24,000, and that's something that the city has been doing since we were not able to. I guess at one point it's a practice, not a policy, and because we weren't able to keep up with those step-in grades, that's something that they implemented or they adopted as a practice a while back. And we are also budgeting citywide for a 7% increase in workers' comp and liability insurance. We saw 10% last year. So salary schedule, I'm not going to read all of this to you, it's in your packet. Just looking at some of the highlights of it, we're just moving, like I said, from an outdated schedule or step-in grade to an updated schedule. We have not changed anyone's salaries. We have just put them where they are currently. This builds a shell for us to work with to allow us to compare ourselves to other cities. This is based upon, there are multiple cities that have published salary studies, and this is one of their recommendations. All of the reports that I have looked at, and I've looked at many of them, they all say, number one, you need to revise your job descriptions to include updated duties, make sure that they are all updated, create an open range pay plan, which is a formula-driven range, which is what I've done. And then that allows you to assess your market competitiveness, conduct classification and compensation studies every 5 years. So that's something that we need to maybe look into doing now that we have this shell kind of built. do want to jump back to health really fast, just to let you know. We have been given the opportunity to include a teledoc in our program, which is free for us to give to as a benefit to each of the employees. And I believe it's, and I don't see Ms. Robinson in here, but I believe it was about $5 to $10, I think, compared to like a copay that you would typically do. You get on the phone, there's an app, or you can call the doctor. You make an appointment through this app, they call you back, and basically they run through all your symptoms. There's even a camera, you can show them, you know, what you look like, that sort of thing, and they will call you in a prescription. So they'll talk you through everything. Or they will, right, oh, yes, with your health benefits, absolutely. And they will tell you if, oh, you need to go get blood work, or you really need to go in and see a doctor. But if it's, I have a scratchy throat, my ears are hurting, whatever, they will go ahead and call you in that. And they said it's great for like children or whatever, but it's only for those that are covered underneath your plan. Okay, this is the work, play, live that we implemented this year, just to get our department heads, because I know they're not busy enough anyway, so to get them motivated, get their departments motivated in something that we can do and initiative-wise. Police department, and obviously this is in your packet as well, the details, but police department, they want to modernize their uniforms for both sworn and civilian. City clerk was looking into the preservation of the historic documents that the city has. Public Works looking to initiate team building, and also they're looking into some of their information systems that they use out in the field, work order systems. Fire department is looking at building a small storage building for their fire engine, their 1928. So that they can have storage for their new fire engines that we have, as well as having storage for this, so you don't have to move it in and out. They're hoping, I think they've made a lot of progress on getting that restored. The tires just came in. They had to actually build tires because they don't make those anymore. So, and that's something, their time is being donated for that. Money's being donated for that. Human Resources is looking to revitalize the wellness program that we once had. We're working alongside of our health providers and wanting to. We already have that in the policy manual. We already have something where if you do 3 or 4 different things as an employee, then you get a wellness day. So we're just trying to reinitiate that back. And then the airport, they are looking into, just like last year, promoting the airport as far as going to the commercial opportunities that the airport provides. And they also want to really promote their 10-year anniversary of their fly-in this year. So it's a big year for them. Okay, moving along to general fund. You can see that it says 22% in reserves. That's your reserve amount percentage. If the 22 budget didn't increase, so that's something about reserves. If you're not continuously putting something back in your reserves, but you're increasing your expenditure budget, that percentage is going to look skewed. So if we hadn't have increased our budget, but we kept the same amount or put some in, we would have had a 25%. So it just goes to show that if you're increasing your budget, in order to keep that percentage up, you have to increase your reserves, which goes to the whole contingency idea. We need to make sure that we build in a contingency into our budget. Okay, just a few highlights. Obviously, it talks about in here how certain things are budgeted, that sort of thing, but I'm just going to highlight a few things. We talked earlier about July being the preliminary figures. We're expecting a 4% increase, which is equivalent to $99,000. $1 mil in the city is equal to about $400,000 for us. Let's see. We're still waiting on final values for the fire assessment to know exactly what that's going to be. We do expect an increase as we're seeing an increase in property values as well. FEMA, for IRMA, we've seen some commitments be made, although we haven't received any of the money, but we can track the commitments. The revenues that may change by the time, I can do a follow-up email. Our state projections have not been issued at this time. I think we only have one still, and it's pretty late in the game for them to be issuing some of these projections, so you may see a change in that. Fire assessment may change depending on, obviously we budgeted conservatively, so up or down depending on what we receive in. And then also the golf revenue share, which is something that you'll see in here, will fluctuate. Let's see. All the other things will be discussed later on in the expense side because they're matching. Okay. So same with the expenditures, just going to highlight a few things. City manager, per direction of the search agency, is going to be increasing. We are splitting the assistant to the city manager into two positions. One is assistant to the city clerk, one will be assistant to the city manager. We have the full year of the finance clerk budgeted. Last year we only budgeted half, and we still have yet to fill that position. Revitalization of the wellness program, we already spoke about. IT, so we've talked about this throughout the year, and I believe that Mr. Higman will be here today to give some kind of update. We have a phase 3, 4, and no 5, so 3 and 4, part 1 and 2. You'll be seeing computers being replaced, critical needs first. We've already started replacing some of those that just need computers now, and then we're going to be migrating to Office 365. The phone upgrades and the wiring, that you're going to see, that has been included in when we talk about the building and the outfit of the building. So if we don't go into a new building, we could use that debt service and some other monies to go ahead and do a phone system because it could be taken with us if we decided to move. The debt service for the building, we have a 30-year debt service split among 3 different funds: sanitation, utility, and general. And that's just, we've been talking about that over and over and over again, and we just decided this year we need to put it in the budget to really get our feet moving on that. We already have a car out front, not the city manager car, but a different one that we're going to look in trading in for an administration vehicle. So you'll see a lease purchase on that. Police car leases, just like last year, they're in their second phase of renewals, so you'll see that come forward. They're 2014, I believe. Let's see. The fire department will be applying for a grant for 3 positions. This is supposed to help alleviate some overtime because of the minimum required amount of people that you have to have on one shift. So the city will have to take up 25% for the first 2 years, I believe, which is equivalent to about $27,000. And then the 3rd year it increases, and then we'll reevaluate, see how everything looks, and if it's working out for the fire department. We're including the...
With the understanding that these positions are not our grant positions, and the grant guys positions are not.
Correct. They'll be hired on knowing that they're a grant position. We have to let everybody know that.
Let me interject one thing here. I'm sure all of you heard about the fire at Georgia Pacific yesterday, but I want to thank Chief and all his people. They really made Palatka happy or glad yesterday for what they did out there. And I want to commend you, Chief, for you and all your people, because that's just a show where you can't have too many firemen. I don't care what you do. You never have too many firemen. You guys had 12 out there or something like yesterday? Yes. So that's just a big thing. Thank you so much.
Speaking of fire, there was also a fire cancer policy that was put in place this fiscal year. So we're working with the League of Cities to make sure that we have that policy in our budget.
Not a significant cost, right?
Correct. It's about $1,000 is what they're throwing around right now for everyone, not individually. So it's a lot better than what we thought that it was going to be initially. The grant administrator, like I said earlier in the CRA budget, that she is moving to 100% utility base for this fiscal year. We'll reevaluate based on her duties next fiscal year. We are adding a foreman in streets department so that we could potentially reduce some of those maintenance contracts, concrete work, that sort of thing, where we can make some efficiencies.
Jonathan, we've already seen some of those reductions just on sidewalk paving, right?
Yeah, this individual has worked with that department a little bit to kind of facilitate that transition, and we're liking what we see so far.
So for example, with your sidewalk replacement, your base per lineal foot based on contract versus in-house, what's the difference?
Less than half the cost.
So we're about $10 per lineal in-house and about $20
Yeah.
under contract. So it allows them to be able to come in and do that. And how many miles of sidewalk do we have to replace?
How many do we have to replace?
Yeah.
I'm not even calculating that. It's pretty stressing. We're gonna be doing it for a while.
Okay. And then, let's see, we are moving cultural resources and recreation underneath PAL. That transition has already begun, as you all know. Right, yes, police department, sorry, in conjunction with that transition is already starting, but you're going to see a lot of, they're going to start facilitating some community outreach. We had talked about the Student Advisory Committee, potentially partnering with them, and some city programming that we haven't seen in the past. So we're excited about that, and I think Chief is as well. So.
You've already got your student advisory board working?
We have a mentoring program currently working now, but we, as far as the different areas of the advisory board that we spoke about, Ms. Becker, we're looking at either in the partner or an addition.
And we talked about kind of letting it work in concert with FLC so that you have Fort League Cities and your PAL, kind of they can kind of work dual roles.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So something that, let's see, sorry, I lost my place. Something that we don't have in this budget right now that we may see, speaking of recreation, is I believe that the county is talking about Rotary Park with us, and so you may see some maintenance, just new line items being added or reallocated from other areas. So we'll, that will be coming.
You know, the last time we partnered with them, they took all our equipment and all that stuff, and then when it all fizzled out, they handed it back and left us without a recreation department.
They just handed the park back. They kept it.
Question on the maintenance. Okay, that would mean, are we picking up additional field, or what, you say they'll be handing us back,
Rotary Park.
Rotary Park.
The conversation that's out there has been the opportunity to regain Rotary Park. It's in the South Historic Neighborhood Facility in the South Historic District. But the maintenance for the upgrade for the field would come from a private donor and from Rotary to get that field, to put in new sod, to put in irrigation, and to put in the fencing. So all that stuff would actually come, so that we wouldn't get the field in its current state, we would get it in an upgraded state. We've been having that conversation, and that's something that's going to come before the commission to approve or disapprove.
but after that, then we would take on the upkeep and maintenance.
We would, but in partnership, because on that field, it's actually, so Pinal actually does a lot of the upkeep on that field, like mowing the common areas and the other stuff. And how you do it can come into play. It won't really cost us much more, simply because the field, because the way we got it set up now, the cutting the common areas, all that stuff is done by staff people. It's going to be done by the Parks Department as opposed to by one individual. And so we've got the equipment in place. What we're trying to transition to as we do the Book of Art project is actually have all our mowing in-house and buying and purchasing the real mowers, so it gets away from the whole contracting, like right now with AgriPro. So getting away from that whole contracting piece to where we can actually do all of our own mowing in-house with real mowers, and it's still done at the same staffing level.
So we're gonna be able to do it cheaper than the contractor, right, in-house?
When you hit a certain level of fields, like right now, it makes more sense to use the contractor. When you get that second, when you get the larger facility in, and we're doing a large scale Bermuda project, it may be, instead of going over that amount, if it's easier to have an employee do one, bring another single employee on and buy them more, it makes more sense to do it that way. So, and it could be a cost, and it actually could be a cost savings at the end based on the numbers that we got out there.
And then just to wrap the general fund up, we have transfers and contingencies. transfers we always see going to Goff and Airport for their debt service payment. Their last payment will be 2023.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah. And then Goff to balance their budget. Let's see. The contingency budget of 50,000, that's where I was talking about earlier, where we need to make sure that we always budget a contingency. Obviously, I would like for it to be more, but we can work on building that each year.
That's a soft 50, right? There, it's actually, it could be bigger. depending on
Yeah,
what-
right. So we don't have the end of the year figures for this. It's just projected. So depending on if I was very conservative with that too. So depending on how those numbers end this fiscal year, it could potentially, we would be able to amend this budget to allow for more contingency. Or there would be more contingency already going into the reserves, cash forward. Okay, Better Place Fund. We are very project heavy in Better Place. We're still waiting on the surtax estimates, but we're budgeting about a 5% increase. We have Brownsfield, CDBG. Both of those have already been awarded. We have the St. John's Avenue appropriation. The two new ones that we're looking at are the FDEP and the St. John's River Water Management for the 1.5. I believe those are the only two that haven't been in front of you at this time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The water management district's been awarded, they haven't seen the grant agreement.
Okay, okay,
The 319 is an application.
okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
the other 1.5 is coming, is that tonight? It's coming tonight.
Okay, okay. And then we have the Booker Park project rolling forward. Let's see, expenditures, this is the last year of your Frank George debt service. We did have to budget a portion of that, so the other portion that was not having to be paid has been reallocated out this fiscal year. Our engineering fees are going to be remaining the same. This year, we are budgeting for grant application fees. In the past, we've just paid those, and then it's been amended or washed out. This year, we're actually just putting a line item in there.
Question.
Sure.
As we start to do our engineering, are we at the point where we need to consider bringing engineering in-house based upon what we're putting out?
Within 1 to 2 years, yes. Some of this stuff a single engineer won't be able to do. They won't be able to put these size projects together. The savings we would see would be in the construction inspection and construction monitoring aspect of the project, which is anywhere from 10 to 15% of the total construction cost. So that is something that we could kind of keep in-house. It would reduce our cost to the engineers of record. They would be able to assist me in some of the other smaller projects. I'm the only one that can go out in the field and shoot grades and run those numbers and kind of get that information and do, detailed drawings. I'd say, short answer, within 1 to 2 years, yes, sir.
And there may be an opportunity to do that from a contract perspective as well, right? Which will provide some addition. Sometimes you can in-house, sometimes you can use small engineering firms that will
explore
actually
that
do
and reach out to a few. We're going to be looking for probably an entry and mid-level. That's what we'd be able to afford. Senior level engineers going to be, demanding upwards of 80,000 or more a year.
And just for the record, just give the number for what, so that everyone can understand what we're talking about, the number that we're budgeting for engineering right now.
Well, this is 15, is that what it is?
That was
150.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost a zero.
And so, going in-house and,
It does include some surveying as well.
so going in-house and going in-house and possibly doing continuous services on surveying will put us in a position where we could possibly see some cost savings depending on what projects we have out, if we're starting to do more projects in the future.
Okay. Capital outlay always includes our sidewalks, stormwater resurfacing, and striping. We have in there for the water taxi refurbishment, this including in the general fund as well, something that we're going to have to bring back up whenever we talk about the contract again. We're not sure. It will depending on what happens, it will affect the general fund as well as some upgrades that we would have to have on the water taxi. We have a city portion for the St. John's Avenue. It's a county project. primarily. However, the city does have a portion in this, which is $206,000. Mr. Griffith could give you more information about that if you need more information.
I want to ask you, what happens with the building you have on the waterfront? That's all in the water taxi contract?
Right.
Correct, and we'll have to revisit that sooner rather than later.
So the operation of the ship store is in the voters' lounge part of that contract. And so there's a complete rewrite of that contract that'll be before the commission. So, no comment. Next.
As we said in some of the revenues, we have the grant match expenditures for those. And you can read the listing of them. If you need any information, we can give that to you. And then we have the Booker Park with the city match. It's a 50-50. True reserve, so up at the top, whenever you see the 1.4 reserves, that is because the budget is, again, a percentage game. The budget went from 1 million to 7 million because we had so many grants and that big appropriation, that sort of thing. If you really just look at the true reserve coverage of those debt services, the capital outlay that we really have to fund, it's a real 9%. So it's in line with what it has been in the past. That's, percentages can be skewed. Okay, moving on to the airport. We talked again about the transfer. The debt service is 157. It fluctuates, like I said, this is the budget amount, but this is not the year-end amount. So I won't know that until we end the year, and I have to see how much they are either over and under. A lot of times, this transfer, what I'm seeing after being here a year now, is that a lot of it is due to grant timing, when they bring in the monies, when they spent more money. So it all ends up washing at some point, but it's really due to timing. So last year we were able to transfer over 130,000 back to the general fund. The general fund advanced back years ago some money to the airport, and it's still hanging out there in our GL accounting terms and everything, but it's still hanging out there. They still owe about 160, I think 63 to pay the general fund back. So hopefully we're going to be exploring some different ways to help the airport out.
Did we include, the transportation for John?
Yes, that's in there. So we have a few projects. Again, I believe all of these you have at least seen coming before you. They just won't really start until next fiscal year. You have the runway, the beacon, electrical vault. There's a hangar project, the Ready grant. Let's see, some of the city portion of that runway project, they have projected some revenues from the sale of some millings and different things like that, office space. Let's see. As far as expenditures are concerned, we did have, just like general fund and citywide, you're going to see a retirement increase, workers' comp, liability increase. We are looking to purchase or lease a vehicle for the airport because they do so much transporting back and to and from the airport, and I believe that their vehicle that they have now is extremely old.
It's a 1984 pickup truck.
1984 pickup truck.
It's a 95. We got to put it in.
Yeah. So again, they're really starting to promote this year their 10th annual fly-in, so that's going to be exciting for the city to witness.
With the new truck.
Yeah. The wings on it.
Okay, moving on to the golf fund. We did see an increase in auditing costs this year and liability. This is the first full fiscal year. Well, I'm working in 3 different fiscal years right now, but for auditing purposes, it's the first full fiscal year that they were actually in their franchise agreement, which required a new type of audit. And so it did increase our price for auditing, and we'll see that as a recurring expense. We will be going out for audit RFP as well soon. Nothing changed really in that everything's dictated by that franchise agreement. So we have certain expenditures that we, the city, has to have on their books, and then the revenues, they pay us a certain amount for the restaurant lease. One thing that we are coming close to, which is exciting for the golf course, is that we are looking at being able to see a cost or revenue share. Per the agreement, it's 20%, not 50%, but 20% of their revenues over $520,000, we are having to transfer from we are able to see. So right now, we thought that it would be about $40,000, or we're looking at about $40,000. So 20% of that is $8,000. So we'll see a share. Half of it goes to general fund, half of it remains for capital. Okay.
When is our next contract, I think, with the golf course, I think? Is it
5 year or 3
5
years?
5 years?
5 year.
5 year.
5 year.
Yeah, so
So we're a year into it.
Yeah.
we're a year and a half, yeah.
2 years. This is your 2. So 3 years.
Okay, sanitation fund. You're going to see, let's see here. Okay, you're going to see a $2.35 increase to residential garbage fees. This puts us in line with Green Cove. It'll make us a $19 charge. Collection is the same as Green Cove's, 2 times a week, and a weekly 2-yard limit. You're also going to see a 6.5% increase to the non-residential, which is in line to what we have previously approved. Let's see, debt proceeds, that's a rollover from, we did not purchase that vehicle this year, so we're going to be purchasing it next year. I believe at this point, and Mr. Griffiths isn't in here to make sure that I'm not telling a fib to you all, but that we're on a cycle plan now with all of our vehicles in sanitation. Okay. Same thing, you're going to see your retirement increasing, your workers' comp and liability increasing. We did have a reduction in garage maintenance because somebody retired and we hired on a little bit lower salary. As we talked about earlier, professional development, we are increasing that in this fund so that we can get those guys out and able to help with their professional development. This is a typo. This is not there anymore. We did a increase to vehicle maintenance and the transfer to the general fund for the billing. Okay. Utility fund, this is always the fun one. Okay, so this year you're not going to be seeing any increase to your consumption fees, which is your per gallon rate. Last year we were able to put in that structure that has the connection per meter charge rate. So this year we're just really polishing up on that. You're going to see in a little bit whenever we turn to the actual billing and the rate structure, you're going to see one of them go down instead of increase like the others. This is the 5/8 meter. So what we did last year is we did different dollar amounts that were approved for all the different size. We went back this year and we said if a non-residential, it has a 5/8 meter and it's the same exact size as a residential meter, why are we charging one a different? They still get charged a different consumption rate,
Right.
but their meter is the same size. So we're just correcting it. Instead of increasing the residential, we're decreasing the non-res. This puts us right, let's see, this puts us in with resembling the city of St. Augustine's FRWA, and there's a statute out there. We have a couple of projects, great projects that are rolling forward. We're again going to see some FEMA money come in. Hopefully it's already been committed, we just haven't received it. And then we have debt proceeds, which we're going to talk about with the expenditures. Let's see, capital, there's a new position. I'm going to skip over the liability. We've already talked about that in every fund. The new position at the water plant, there's multiple people in drop, and so we want to start that succession training. Capital outlay expenditures, there's plant improvements, reclaimed water projects, pump station. You can read the remainder. There's just a lot going on in this fund. We're receiving the salary for the resource manager, the grant administrator, in this fund at 100%. We are budgeting a 2.5 in the SRF potable, which is the same that we budgeted last year. We were able to do about 2.1 this year. We are budgeting the full debt service amount, so we were originally awarded the $7.8 million in the potable lines. We are going to be able to this year see being able to budget the full amount so that we can complete that project. Let's see, and I believe that Mr. Griffith said that it was 30% of the 60% of lines that needed to be redone.
Say that again?
Yeah, hold
About
on.
the 60 linear miles of line.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. I said percent twice.
Okay, 30% of the 60
Yeah,
linear
there are
miles.
60 linear miles roughly that, right, that needs.
Okay,
We've done about a third of the town.
Thank you.
okay.
Let me not get too crazy. Okay, let's see, and then the transfer for the building. You also have this in your packet. This is what we were talking about, the ERC comparisons where we said the city of St. Augustine, the statute, and the FRWA, and where the Palatka lies. These are really small up there, but this is the actual rate table. You have this in your package as well. The red just shows you the change. That one was water, and this is sewer. And then this are some bill comparisons. So last year, this is where we were starting from, this column right here. This is where we were approved for 18-19. So you can tell there are large jumps in between here just to get everybody in the right category that they needed to be. This is our proposed, and this is going to be your monthly difference between here and here, and your annual difference. So again, this is where I said that they have the same meter sizes as those up here. And that. Any questions?
Any questions from the commission? From the audience? Wow, you sure?
It's been pretty.
Thank you.
Are you sure?
Great job.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, I will do a follow-up email, and if you should have any, if you sleep on it and you have any heartburn, just let me know.
That's scary. Parting thoughts, Chief Shaw, Ms. Robinson, Seal.
October.
When your debt goes away.
23?
No, you need it. What year's your truck? 79?
78.
Chief. Ms. Becker,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Griffin, I'm sorry, Ms. Durgis. I did it again.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, no, he called him Mr.
I-
Driggs last time.
You're related now.
Yeah. I can make that trouble.
Ms. Durgis. Mr. Gardner.
I think they've done an outstanding job of just coming in new and seeing what it is. Every time I talk to you, I'm elated at what I'm seeing and how the departments are running, and this budget process was great, and I was glad to be part of it. I thank you for that, and I think the employees will be happy with what you've done for them.
Vice Mayor.
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Boyle.
I think I'm gonna make a motion at airport. Mr. John, you will keep his 84 because it's an antique. It's an antique and it's going up in value.
No, it's probably a scary old 5.
Let me just quit. I just give what
That's good.
I
No
think-
action will be taken on topics of discussion.
Yeah, I just kidding. But I think the budget process went very well, smooth, and I thank everybody who participated in that process that made it go smooth. And hats off to Miss Logan, who led that process, and
And Ms. Jill?
yeah,
Absolutely.
so,
She keeps us floating.
yeah, so I think we're heading in the right direction, and I just appreciate everybody for all their hard work.
Commissioner McCaskill?
Not to prolong the meeting, but the same thing here. I share the same sentiments. Good to see you in here, Jill. I appreciate the job you've done in this process.
Absolutely.
You surely made it easier too as well, Logan. So thanks.
Commissioner Campbell?
Why you started laughing when you called me? I just want y'all to know that Logan gives me the hard time, but we're greatly appreciative of everyone that played a role in this process. I too today just finished 3 budgets myself for my after-school program, so I know on my small scale what's put in it, and I can just imagine the millions that you are faced with. So thank you to everyone who played a part in it. Logan, for making this an easy process. By the time I came in for my one-on-one, there was nothing left for me to say or do. But I'm grateful for everyone. Thank you so much.
She already yelled at me.
Somebody,
So,
you got me.
it's scary when we do it the first time. But this is the second round of that. So I guess we're getting better at the process. Again, you guys have done a great job. And for all the cuts, and I think Albert and Costello were a lot nicer than you are throughout that process. But again, our main purpose is to make sure we run the city efficiently, that we're able to get the infrastructure and all the things in place, but that we also create the proper working environment for our folks. And I think that's the piece of this puzzle that's been missing for the last few years. We've talked about it, we've vetted it, and we're finally at a point where we're getting ready to put forth the proper working atmosphere for better working conditions, which will lead to greater efficiency. And I think ultimately greater technologies within the city and better service. And so we're moving forward piece by piece we are taking pennies and making dollars. And I think that if once we continue to do that, we continue to work cohesively to build reserves up, which is where we need to be. We need to look at building reserves up. The question now becomes, as you look at it, and I think Ms. Triggers kind of put it out there before, we've got to look at where we are as it relates to fire assessment in the future. We got to start thinking what we do with numbers. We're at 50% on institution. Do we go up on that? Do we change the model? What do we do? Because the one thing that we want to make sure that we do is not ever be in a position again where we've got $800,000 in reserves. We don't ever want to be in that position. And we want to make sure that even though we're spending down on the $7.5 million, that we understand that the water plant and the wastewater treatment plant are going to need significant capital improvements. The conversations with USDA have started, and we've got some encouraging information again from them, from Phil Leary, as it relates to possible opportunities for waiver and to be able to get the wastewater treatment plant done. But we can't bank on anyone solving our problems other than us. So we have to make sure we create sustainable budgets and we plan for the future on our own, so that anything that we get from appropriation, anything that we get by way of grants is a bonus. And it helps escalate the time schedule. But we've got to look at business development, citizen development, workforce innovation programs, all those other things that are there, and create those partnerships. And so we're biting pieces of this apple off one at a time. But we've got to make sure that we continue to use the resources that are available to us, and we cultivate the partnerships. So again, we thank SBDC for being here today throughout this process as well, Blue Crab and Mr. Parson, and Palatka Young Professional, just for being here and taking part in this. Because all too many times I think citizens miss out on this portion and the reality of what this is. And so we find ourselves, it looks like a quick process, but it's months and months and months of late hours and long discussions and having department heads come in with a wish list, for lack of any other term, as to what you want to do, to be told no on some things, but to move forward. And I think overall the department heads have done a great job. And that's the piece of this puzzle that's always the most important piece, because it allows you to be able to put the stuff in place. And so this commission, I think you guys have done a great job, I think, in providing new initiatives, providing insights and leadership in the community. Betsy in the interim position, great job on helping with this budget as well. So, and last but not least, Mr. Garner, who's only been here for a week, but I can tell you, he's the hardest working and fastest reading person I've ever seen. He read 2 years of minutes in about 3 days, and he came in here full scale. He sat in on some of the one-on-ones, and I think his insight and wisdom have been good for us because it brings a whole new set of eyes to what we've got going on. And again, kudos to finance. And so
That's right.
we're done with that. We're done with budget for this point. We've got the second meeting where we approve. From there, we'll move forward and continually build on and go from there. We've got a 5:15 reception with the Palatka Patriots, and we're ready.